Welcome back to the channel and back to another entry into the dark bad endings from video games. As we discussed in past videos, dark bad endings from certain video games give the player a special kind of emotion that is a combination of stuff like fear, sadness, and dread, just to name a few. These are often disastrous to the surrounding plot and world that the game takes place in, and it makes you feel like you messed up on a cataclysmic level usually. So today we're taking a look at some more of the darker bad endings from video games, with quite a few entries today that have come from previous episode comments, so thanks in advance to everyone who contributed to today's video. And as always, if you'd like to leave your own dark bad ending in the comments down below, there's a chance I'll cover it in a future video if I haven't already in one of the past videos. Anyway, let's go ahead and hop into some genuinely depressing conclusions to some of our favorite video games. A game that is most known for its gore and disturbing game over screens makes for a great candidate for this series. Not only that, but if you don't complete the overall objective in this game, you curse not only yourself, but your entire family line from that point forward. I mean, talk about consequences. This game is known as Waxworks and was a first-person dungeon crawler on the Amiga. No surprise there. Amiga's library of games is so surreal and weird. I'm able to talk about the games in different series on the channel. For example, I just talked about Top Bananas, so check that out in this video if you're curious about that game. Immediately from the box art, you are warned that this isn't going to be your typical dungeon crawler. And I gotta say, this is one of the coolest box arts I've ever seen. It's unassuming at first until you realize the wax of the candle has demonic faces hidden in it. A subtle way to warn the player of the horrors that await in the game, but also being pretty deceiving. For a development company known as Horrorsoft, they really didn't pull any punches here, as even considering the older visuals, these are still some of the most surreal and bleak death screens I've ever seen in a video game. The unique pixel art style really helps to portray these scenes as graphic and as dark as they actually are, versus another game's art style which may not age as well and come off as goofier than scary. Waxworks uses this art style to make the surrounding world creepy as hell, and the limitations of the game only help to build more of this atmosphere. Stuff like the strange lighting in scenes like this, or the way the NPCs will seemingly teleport in front of you instead of having walking animations. Waxworks sees your main character in modern day seeking a way to break a family curse placed on their lineage years ago, where a witch cursed the family lineage that anytime twins were born, one would be by default be evil and serve the demon known as Beelzebub. This serves as the origins to the bosses of the game, which takes place as real-life evil figures from the past, like Jack the Ripper, for example. To break the curse, the main character travels through time to different periods to kill the evil twins throughout the generations that have cursed his lineage. This is all to save his current day twin brother from becoming the next servant to Beelzebub, and if done right, you will end up fighting the witch who originally cursed your lineage. Thanks to this unique gameplay loop, you'll see a lot of different unique settings throughout the game, which helps up the number of unique death scenes as well. Everything from getting stabbed by an ancient Egyptian god to being burned by acid from this fucking thing here. What the hell is that? Any number of the game overs could be considered dark and horrifying, but to just cherry pick a few here that stood out to me. In the Egyptian level, you can find a room that's flooded with water, and when you go to interact to fill the pots you're carrying with said water, you will be jump scared by an alligator that then drags you into the dark depths of the water down below. This is a situation where the lighting really makes this way more scary than it should be. You are killed instantly and become a crocodile snack, with this being the last thing you see. I think we should all apologize to the Donkey Kong Country game over screens, because they could have been so much worse, dude. The crocodiles could have been munching on Donkey's toes, dude. In the London era level, you can run across these creepy police characters who will mistake you for Jack the Ripper, and you end up being hung in the town square for everybody to see and laugh. Not only can police mistake you for the Ripper, but the townsfolk do as well, and bludgeon the main character to death in a pretty grisly manner. Our boy's out like a light. The game features a zombie time period, because we all remember when that happened. happen, you know, back in ancient Rome when the zombies roamed Earth. Where do you think Rome came from, brother? Those zombies weren't out there fucking skipping, I'll tell you that. This level features some of the most gruesome screens, like this one that features a maimed main character that is barely recognizable anymore. Jesus Christ. Worst yet is when you arrive at this level, where the twin known as the Evil One runs a cult of humanoid plant mutants. These creatures are horrifying and cause absolute devastation to the player characters, so much so I'm not even sure that I could show some of these game overs on this here platform. Lastly is the overall bad ending to the game, where when you fail to defeat the witch by stabbing her with a knife after chopping off her head, the game will then end with this message stating the following: "You have failed. You have not prevented the witch from casting her wicked curse. Your family is cursed forever. Every fucking generation that has the misfortune to bear twins will be affected by the witch's words. Your twin brother is doomed to serve Beelzebub forever." Get wrecked, idiot. Yeah, it gives off heavy Friday the 13th on NES game over energy right here.
But here comes a game like Friday the 13th that just cuts the bullshit, shows some balls, comes flat out and says, "You're fucking dead."
Overall, the amount of damage that can happen to their player and their family is overwhelming in the game, whether it's one of the many fucked up deaths or the deafening end that spells out you weren't able to save your own twin brother from Beelzebub, as well as the curse that looms over your family. Get fucked, great grand twin. To be fair, it's not like the good ending is all that great, as you get this terrifying uncanny valley picture of your twin brother staring through you with a creepy meth grin to boot. What you looking at, dude? Because it's not me. What did Beelzebub do to you? You can always turn to indie games to see fully unique gameplay loops or stories in a much more contained space. This has spawned a lot of unique Shyamalan twists, like the ending of Braid, or with the next entry's game known as Hope, The Other Side of Adventure. Hope was a mobile game app that released back in 2013 that touted itself as more of a visual experience than an actual video game, but hey man, there's buttons here on the screen, so it's good enough for me. If you were lucky enough to play the game back then when it released, you were one of the few who still had access after the game was part of the mass extinction event in 2015 when Apple updated their app requirements for the App Store. The game itself tells of a classic story of a knight setting out to save a princess, which a lot of game and movie plots were pretty much boiled down to back in the day. Hey, it's a little, there's more flair, there's turtles and mushrooms walking about, but, you know, it's the same fucking, why can I not think of a classic story? Puss in Boots. It's that classic story all over again, dude. However, like the game title suggests, the game shows the other side of this typical adventure game, the princess's perspective. This shows the dark reality of a princess being kidnapped and held against her will, which is broken down to depressing detail here throughout the game, and this is what makes up the bulk of the game. So strap in, buddy. Instead of playing through the typical platforming adventure, which the game even lets you play through a small segment of in the beginning, you are instead playing as the princess in the room she's locked in. The only thing you can do is walk around the room and listen to the princess's monologues, which progressively get darker with each passing day.
He did not want to stain the train or the veil beforehand. Stain? I asked again.
Not only that, but you can begin to see evidence of the physical abuse she's receiving from the Duke, who is her kidnapper, and who, by the way, is disgustingly peering down at her from this large painting every waking minute. The knight only has 5 days to save the princess before the Duke marries her against her will. You play through each day, which lasts about 5 minutes each, and are filled with the dreadful thoughts of the princess as she's being held against her will.
I am not marrying him, I repeat to myself. I look at the blood on my hands. Maybe I could get used to my wounds. Sometimes sadness overcomes me. But there are also minutes in which I walk along the tower, restarting it again.
Not only does the game's tone shift from the opening, but also the art style shifts as well, as visually the princess's segments are much more eerie and almost Tim Burton-like. The bad ending we're talking about comes near the end of the game, where the knight is defeated and the player is prompted with a classic punch-out continue screen. However, the trick here is the only way to continue was to choose the option that costs $1.99. If you're like any sensible person, when questioned with a $2 charge, you choose no thanks, and you get the following ending. The princess loses all hope of the knight coming to save her, and instead of bending the knee to her situation, she takes things into her own hands and took the sewer slide out, if you catch what I'm tossing out. I don't even know if I could show this ending in full here, and I don't know if I want to, as it's very dark, especially as an ending most players would have likely seen, especially if you know the value of $1. Call me cheap, but homeboy should have clutched it up, dude. If I was controlling his ass, that wouldn't have happened. There would have been no talk of microtransactions. In reality, if you see past the loss of a couple bucks and click on the option to save the night, the game will continue on for free anyway, and states it was just a test to see if you had it in your heart to actually save the princess. A unique way to see gamers' morals being tested here, but I don't know, man. Being shamed into microtransactions is kind of wild. Even if it wasn't a real microtransaction, but whatever, it was $2. The true good ending will end when the knight kicks down the door and dances with the princess before the game switches back to the pixel art style and the couple lives happily ever after. Or so it would be in a normal game, right? But this ending still doesn't negate the trauma the princess experienced in the castle, both physically and mentally. This has led many players to believe that given the universe and the story told here, this is still a pretty bleak ending for the princess, as her story is likely never mentioned again and is overshadowed by, ooh, good job, knight, you did it, even though we didn't see him do anything. In fact, we had to fucking pony up $2, a fake $2. Don't get me wrong, out of the two, this is by far the better ending, but given all of the dialogue we got from the princess during the game, she's likely not going to recover from this experience for quite a while, if ever. I think the game shows a unique side of the classic knight's adventure and really puts into perspective what could be happening whenever a famous princess is captured. Listen, man, I'm starting to think Peach got low-key lucky being turned into a window in Super Mario 64 right about now. Jesus Christ. The Oddworld games have some incredible world building and atmosphere that gives off an equally comical and depressing atmosphere. Not only are the Oddworld games remembered and known for their unique puzzles and world building they presented, but the games also go down in infamy for their bad endings. Most of the Oddworld games have a definitive bad ending that usually spells the death for Abe and his homies, or whoever's the protagonist in that said game. Today we're just going to take a look at the bad endings for both Abe's Odyssey and Abe's Exodus, and I'm going to save the other Oddworld games bad endings for a future video, just so we're not talking about Oddworld for 20 minutes. The first Oddworld game immediately presents the darker parts of the game, pretty much forefront, and for this to be the introduction to the entire series is very fitting. A race known as the Madokans are enslaved by another race known as the Gluckons that grind up the Madokans for products similar to slaughter farms in real life. It's up to one Madokan to break from this cycle and save his fellow brethren. That Madokan is known as Abe and is the protagonist for the first two games and is largely the face of the series. Throughout Abe's Odyssey, you will complete several puzzles, mainly to gather your fellow Madokan in order to free them from slavery under the Gluckons. If you save at least 50 of these homies, you will get the good ending where when Abe is knocked out and captured by Moloch and is about to be grinded up, the saved Madokans gang together and save Abe by shocking Moloch and his lackey before freeing Abe from a pretty grueling demise. However, if you don't save at least 50 Madokans throughout your gameplay, they will instead come to realize Abe didn't do really a lot at all to save them, and basically decide collectively to let him die at the hands of Moloch, which actually plays out in the following scene.
He was killing it. Did you see him? Yeah, he didn't do much. But Abe, he's one of us. He wasn't any good. He wasn't really that good. He shot us. Well, what do you think? He was a schmuck. Well, how about you? I don't get it. No, boss? No, guys, no. Let him.
Abe is hanging above a saw-like trap mulcher thing where Abe can be seen slowly losing his grip before falling in and being chopped to pieces, of which you can see a few fly up into the view of the camera. My homeboys turn into ground beef. It reminds me of not saving all the forest elves in Wario World, but if you didn't get them all, they all ganged up on Wario and took him out, Wicker Man style or something. You can also see a newer HD version of the same bad ending from New and Tasty, the remake of the original game, wherein it's basically the same ending except you get a bit more context around the Madokan's decision to leave Abe to die.
Yeah, he didn't do much, but Abe, he's one of us. He wasn't any good. He shot us. Well, what do you think? He was a schmuck. Well, how about you? I don't get it. No, boss? No, guys, no. Let him.
Yeah, this is a pretty brutal ending for our main character here, but Abe's supposed to be the savior of his own people. He should have made it at least his second goal to save as many Madokans as possible. All that considered, it's still a pretty grim ending for someone as goofy and dumb as Abe, and one that isn't fully unexpected in this dark world, and all but showed his body getting ground into a mystery meat for a Jack-in-the-Box taco. I could go for one of those right now. Sorry, Abe, I'm hungry. In the quintology of the Oddworld series, of which we are still waiting for that next one to come out, the sequel to Abe's Odyssey, Abe's Exodus was seen more as a small follow-up to Abe's Odyssey than one of the quintessential Oddworld games. Ironically, Abe's Exodus only improves on everything from Odyssey, and is seen by many to be the definitive classic Oddworld game. This is due to improvements to gameplay elements like the Madokans you save, which now have emotional responses to Abe. For example, a Madokan can be angry, and Abe must talk them down from wringing Abe's neck. If a depressed Madokan is hit by a nearby angry Madokan, it'll begin hitting itself until it can sadly pass away from its own actions. Never said this shit wasn't dark, dude. Of course these Madokans would be acting out and not trusting of Abe. Look where they live, look where they spend their time. Abe's Exodus takes a similar story path to Odyssey, in which the Madokans have been captured and live as slaves digging up ancient bones of their ancestors, all while they don't know what they're actually mining. That's because the Gluckans decided to stitch most of the Madokans' eyes shut, so they don't even know the absolute horrors of what they're carrying out here. No wonder there are Madokans you can find that are fucking barely holding on. Holy shit. Similar to Abe's Odyssey, the bad ending comes from not freeing enough of your homeboys, this time by missing over half of the freeable Madokans. Near the end of the game, when encountering the few saved Madokans, they see Abe as lazy and end up knocking him out and attaching him to a torture device that could see other Madokans being tortured by throughout the game. Just like those he didn't save, Abe is left in this torture device to endure the tear extractor. The Brewmaster, similar to Moloch, will see Abe in the machine and attempt to extract all of Abe's tears and max out the machine.
I'm on it.
Abe endures insane pain and his tears are extracted from being shocked, a la the Green Mile or fucking Binding of Isaac. I don't know. All I know is there's a lot of tears and there's a lot of shocking going on, dude. After pushing the machine and Abe to their breaking point, Abe will burst into a flock of birds that fly away before the Brewmaster and his minion begin having a good old laugh about Abe's demise. A good chortle, if you will. At first sight, you know, this is the game showing that Abe will likely respawn from this death because flocks of birds, as seen in the game up until this point, are used as portals by the Madokans. Although, when I first saw this, I thought he just got so fucked up he turned into a flock of birds. That was all that was left for him. Which then reminded me of that crow scene from that one dinosaur movie in the 90s. That shit traumatized me, man. Overall, in my opinion, this is definitely worse than the Odyssey's bad ending, as at least in that case, there are other similar deaths within the game itself where Abe is chopped up to bits. However, to see Abe endure this torture up until being killed by it is especially dark. Again, can't feel too bad for him because he did the reverse monkey meme to the other Madokans suffering the same fate, but still, to see our boy getting his literal tears extracted in such a savage way, it's hard to see, man. In the end, not only is Abe tortured to death, but the Madokan race is left to keep serving the Gluckans and mining the bones of their ancestors, and the Soulstorm brew keeps living strong off the bones of those laid to rest. Real fucked up shit, dude. The Oddworld series has quite a few more games with their own versions of bad endings, but that's where we'll stop for today. I'll definitely cover the rest of the series' bad endings in a future episode, but just so we're not talking solely about Oddworld for the next 20 minutes, we'll go ahead and move on. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R series prides itself on showing the grueling realism of a post-apocalyptic world due to nuclear devastation. Not only does it have unique enemies that have spawned from radiation, but the surrounding world is just as creepy. The first game, known as Shadow of Chernobyl, started the iconic series and influenced so many of the modern horror first-person shooter games. The game added in amazing RPG elements for its time to the point it felt very realistic with your decisions actually affecting your path ahead. This is nowhere more present than in the endings of the game, where depending on things like reputation and who you left alive in the game depends on what ending you get. The bad ending, mostly known as the negative ending, comes when the player reaches the wish granter and has less than 50,000 rubles, left the two main faction leaders alive, and has what is considered a terrible reputation in the game. I could think of a thing or two to get some terrible reputation in video games, but that's just me. Upon reaching the wish granter, the protagonist, instead of wishing for the actual real wish, that's the good ending wish, they will instead wish for control over humanity, with the translation in the Russian version being destroying all of humanity instead of controlling it. After this, the following scene will play out where S.T.A.L.K.E.R finds himself in a dark void before visions of terror and nuclear holocaust play out in front of him. To be honest, it just looks like an edgy dark web video you might stumble across on the safe web even. But the implications given what S.T.A.L.K.E.R just wished for is dark as hell. After these flashing images go away, S.T.A.L.K.E.R is left in the dark void, alone. Before long, the camera zooms out far enough that he fades into the darkness before the game ends. There are several theories about what this ending means for the world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R and S.T.A.L.K.E.R himself. Some think that after making this wish, S.T.A.L.K.E.R is transported to the void in order to observe humanity and ultimately control/destroy it. S.T.A.L.K.E.R sees what he's done, and as the camera fades out, that marks the end of humanity and thus the end of S.T.A.L.K.E.R, as there is nothing left to control or destroy. Not only does this ending show just how dark your character can get by the end of the game, but also shows the true power of the wish granter and is the ultimate be careful what you wish for. S.T.A.L.K.E.R is so deprived of humanity by the end that he wishes for the destruction of it before he himself is destroyed, as he was part of humanity too. Both metaphorically and literally, this is one of the strangest and creepiest endings in the game and the series as a whole. The 90s were a strange time, especially for science fiction, where the clear fear was computers and AI taking over. It's perhaps taking a bit longer for that to happen, at least on the AI side, but I'd say they were ahead of their time, dude. This spawned a lot of cool horror ideas, like the idea behind the I have no mouth and I must scream novel and video game that followed after. This game is iconic even if you've never played it because of the surreal and disturbing imagery found within. Much like Waxworks, the pixel art here still holds up today and is terrifying. Perhaps one of the most known images from the game is actually the subject of today's entry, wherein any number of the 5 characters you play as can meet a pretty grisly fate. To be honest, they're not doing well as it is, but the chance to escape literal hell, it's worth trying, right? Let me explain a bit. Let me back it up. A large supercomputer known as AM, has taken over and wiped out all of humanity besides 5 humans who the supercomputer keeps to torture every minute of every day. Pure hatred for the human race. Let's go, dude. AM decides to push each human through a dream sequence of sorts where their world is created by the supercomputer and often plays on the survivor's trauma. Take, for example, Ellen's dream sequence, which is one of the darkest, wherein she ends up in the same elevator that she was assaulted in, only to have to face and take down her attacker again in the same scenario. The player is given a choice to be good morally throughout these sequences, which is the way to get the best ending, in which all of the survivors still die, but at least they are able to take down the supercomputers and lay a foundation for humanity to return. On the flip side, to get the bad ending, the player needs to go for more morally corrupt actions to decrease their spiritual barometer, making it harder to defeat AM in the end. Pretty much every character can meet the same dark fate, where they fail to stop the supercomputer and are turned into a pile of flesh that trumps most body horror things I've seen in my life. Maybe Tusk still fucks me up a little bit more, but can you blame me? Jesus. I hate that movie. This is also where the title of the story comes from, as each character states, I have no mouth and I must scream, before the game fades out. The pure agony the characters appear to be in is terrifying, and to so bluntly say that I need to scream but can't is even more disturbing. I think that makes it the perfect title for the story, as it's not pretending to be anything it's not, and what it is a dark, surreal, disturbing trek to try and save what's left of humanity. Even when you do everything right, you and your friends die, which is by far the best ending when considering how long they've been tortured and what the other option is. What would you want? Give me that sweet release, brother. It's just a depressing experience through and through, whether you're looking at just the ending or some sort of fucked up real life inspirations you can find in the game. Listen, it's a cult classic in the horror gaming genre and has some of the darkest endings in gaming, whether the game classifies it as good or not. You know, every outcome from this shit is so depressing. The Pokemon series gets dark when it wants to, but that rarely comes at the end of a game. Even in this case, this bad ending from the spin-off series Pokemon Ranger, the bad ending comes in the midst of a mission and not so much at the end of the game. So yeah, this is more of a dark game over, but I figured it's worth talking about as the implications are some of the darkest I've seen in the entire series. In Pokemon Ranger Shadows of Almia, you will enter a cargo ship to rescue your fellow Pokemon, but you have a time limit that you need to complete all objectives in, otherwise you will get this bad ending. The timer will reach 0 before the player hears a huge boom somewhere distant in the ship, accompanied by the screen shaking. Before long, the screen fades out and a text box reads, "The ship slid beneath the waves." This is the only ever confirmed time a Pokemon trainer is killed in the games, along with the Pokemon on the ship too. Don't forget about them. Nobody survives a sinking ship, especially if you're still inside when it goes down, man. The game then restarts with the deafness of the last text box looming over the player, probably as you're staring at your chubby little kid face on the other side of the DS. Speechless. Considering the worst that can happen to you and your Pokemon is fainting usually in the games, this is definitely too real for the universe, and perhaps the developers were trying to keep it vague enough to keep players hopeful that, that didn't just happen, but instead the vagueness comes across as dread and doom. Yep, that's it, they're dead. The surrounding level in the cargo ship also isn't a walk through the flowers or a cakewalk or anything, as viewers of this very series have broken down exactly how many steps you'd have to complete, all while the pressure of the timer being present. This is way too much to worry about for a kid, all while giving this ending as a punishment is extreme and seems pretty out of place for the entire series. I think this is why it stuck with so many people, and we'll likely never see a death this grim in the series again. Obviously they allude to death and everything, but not this sudden. That'll do it for today's video. Thanks for watching. Again, if you have any dark, bad endings from video games you'd like me to talk about, maybe some you haven't seen a lot of other people talk about, leave it in the comments down below. Check out the other episodes in the playlist down below as well, and like the video if you liked it. Maybe subscribe too if you're new. Thanks to everyone for getting this channel to well past 50K subscribers at this point. That happened about 2 weeks ago or something. I just haven't made a public announcement about it, but just want to say thanks. That is absolutely insane and something I never thought I'd see on Gamebito Gaming, the channel, So thanks for everyone for giving me a chance, and I hope to keep bringing you guys the content you want to see. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you all in another video soon. Peace.